All right. Good evening, everybody. I am going to call to order the October 2nd, 2024 Planning Board meeting. If we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I wasn't blocking your view, was I?
No.
You gotta bend down a little bit, Tony.
So we're going to go into administrative board work. We've got approval of minutes. If we're all right, I'm just going to hold off till the next meeting. I know there was some changes, Lynn, that you had
Tony
sent through.
hadn't seen them yet.
I'm all set.
Okay.
I'm ready, but if you want to stall, that's
I haven't had a chance to look over. I caught the back end of some emails on it was either Lynn or Art, so I'll just wait till next week on them.
sure. It's fine.
Regional impact determinations.
Just a reminder, Mr. Chair, that the first application, which is the Village on Technology Hill, was previously found to be of regional impact. We've gone through that process, and there's no additional action that's required tonight. The second matter is not of regional impact.
Fantastic. Any discussions with town staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to update the board on a couple of the deliverables that I'm working on. Most, if not all of them, are we're looking at next meeting to target.
Yeah.
We have a public hearing on the update to the definition of a butter in our
Yep.
zoning ordinance. The purpose being to expand opportunities for people to participate in the land development process. We have the short-term rental ordinance that the town council had referred to you for review and comment. We have the legislative changes that the vice chair flagged that we need to implement. I have a discussion about implementing zoning changes.
Yeah, there's another further change the state has done in the definition of a butter also.
Yes, I'm aware of that. I believe as well. Kind of a late breaking thing there. So yes, I think we can have that discussion and implement any needed changes. So thank you for keeping your eye on that, Mr. Vice Chair.
You have to keep your eye on the state very carefully because what they can do to you can wreak havoc.
Exactly right. There was a suggestion that I give the present. Again, I think
Yeah.
the vice chair's suggestion that I give the presentation that I gave to the town council on growth and development and some options for managing that here,
Absolutely.
which I'm happy to do.
Absolutely.
To fulfill Mr. DeFrancesco's request, I have a memo that will come to the planning board outlining the Heritage Commission's jurisdiction and what that
Fantastic.
looks like to inform a further discussion there. And then, as you know, Mr. Chair, you, the chair of the Master Plan Steering Committee, and myself are working towards coordinating our efforts to make sure that the regulatory changes that we're working on are aligned with the master plan work that's ongoing. That's all the updates I have this evening, Mr. Chair.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Anything from the board before we get into new plans? Mr. Vice Chair.
Just curious on where we are with our CIP.
Yes, we are nearing a hearing, I think.
Yeah, I can take it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there's just been a few conflicts of key presenters, so we're coordinating with the district office to revise our date or reschedule our date
Yep.
for it. So
School district office?
yes,
Thank you.
yeah. So we should have the CIP presentation for this board at our November slate of meetings.
Awesome.
And just a reminder, there's no, there's a requirement that we have a CIP for, or there, we need to have, essentially, we need to have a CIP. There's no statutory deadline. There is no, it's to inform the budget process, but the budget process will be with us from now until the middle of winter. So there's plenty of time to, it's later than normal, but there's plenty of time to make sure both of those purposes are achieved.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's how we had geared it, and we tried to be as early as possible for both the school board doing their budget and the town council for doing its budget. But it's flexible. It's nothing specified on when it has to be done, but
Yes, fortunately.
we pretty much have to have one. So.
We have to have one, and you know, and it should be a useful tool, not just a box that we check every year.
And I think that's why we've held off so far is we're not 100% ready for presentation. So we've held off appropriately to allow everybody to get what they need for the CIP.
Right, and I don't think it's any secret that,
Yeah.
look, we've got two initiatives, one on either side of the street that are pending, you know, committee action. We've got the school project, capital projects that have gone through the process, and we've got the Lions matter that is just wrapping up from a board standpoint. And so we really wanted to make sure that we didn't go in, you know, with kind of a
Cart before the horse
Correct.
type.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and obviously, it provides those stakeholders the opportunity to get the information for this committee. So very thankful for it.
Fantastic. Before we get going, Mr. D, I will have you vote for Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Anybody have anything else? Let's jump into some new business here. We have a public hearing on an application for formal review of traffic impacts associated with the Village on Technology Hill, PUD, map 28, lots 31-6, 29-2, and map 17, lots 2, 5-3, 5-4, and 5-5. Londonderry Holdings LLC is the owner and applicant.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, before we get going,
Yes, sir.
I always like taking this as an opportunity because, again, when traffic is always a interesting subject. So again, just to refresh people's memory, again, prior to a development such as this, with such a large scale of this, we have a traffic scoping meeting. At the traffic scoping meeting is town staff, town's consultant. This evening, Evan Drew from Stantec is here, and obviously Bob Duval from Moran's office. Nick was at the meeting, myself, Kelly, Mike, so there's a number of us. At that meeting, again, we have a discussion on what the project is all about. We all know what it's all about now, the residential portion, the manufacturing, the commercial, the childcare. So we have that discussion. We also discuss the analysis periods, again, the time of day, the AM peaks, the PM peaks. So we're all in agreement with what time of days we're looking at. We didn't look at Saturdays out here. Again, it's not like a commercial entity where you would anticipate everybody going to the grocery store on a Saturday. Okay.
Like a supermarket or something like that. Absolutely.
Correct. I'm
Yep.
giving you the Reader's Digest version. These traffic guys can get into the nuts and bolts. I know Tony might really be interested in that part, but I'm gonna just give you the easy part. We also talk about, trip distribution and also how the numbers come about. So again, we look at the ITE, the Institution of Traffic Engineers. That book has various uses, has uses for manufacturing. Such and such a size of a building from nationwide statistics, it generates X amount of traffic. So that we have manufacturing, we have housing, we have commercial. So those various land uses, that's what we talk about. And we talk about, again, the manufacturing, the retail, the general office. We also talk about other development that staff is aware of. So again, at the end of Kitty Hawk Landing, there's still 2 phases of where the school offices are. There's still 2 more phases to be built out there. So they need to take that into consideration.
You're talking up top of the hill there?
Correct.
Yep.
So again, just our knowledge of what's happening in town. Plainview, there was a conditionally approved warehouse, or even if it's got a pulse.
Yep.
We want them to look at it.
Yep.
Very similar to what happened with 2V. If you remember 2V and Vista Ridge and all that. So again, they need to take that into consideration. The other one that had a pulse was Page Road, the warehouse.
The warehouse on the left side there?
Yeah,
Yep.
so again, we throw it all at them. They have traffic reports, they can look at those numbers and analyze, or take a look at that and include that in their analysis, okay? So we also talk about, the study area intersections. Where do we want them to look at the intersections? Harvey Road at Technology, Harvey Road at Nakira, Harvey Road at Webster, Grenier Field at Webster, Grenier Field at Kitty Hawk, New Hampshire 28 at Page, that's that signalized intersection, Akira Way at Technology, Akira Way at proposed site driveway, Mammoth Road at Page Road, Grenier Field Road, that's that unsignalized intersection. So again, just because we know what the problem areas are, so that's why we have that discussion, and we hash it out, and those are what they look at, those areas. We also talk about their warrant analysis. So again, does that particular intersection with all that added traffic to it and the existing traffic, does it warrant a signalized intersection? So they go through that analysis. They also look at the analysis for turning lanes. So there's a lot of discussion that goes on back and forth. So, and then they do the traffic counts, the actual traffic counts. They look at background growth of 1% per year. Lately, we've been having a COVID factor that we throw in there. So again, it's just kind of standard, and, you know, that's what the scoping meeting is all about. So after we hash all that, Bob goes back, or TF Moran goes back, they do the traffic counts, and Bob creates this great report that kind of looks at what's gonna happen. So Bob, I just want to again remind everybody kind of what, it's not just, you know.
What the process itself is,
Right.
absolutely.
So
From-
there is-
From inception to where we are today.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. And
Lot-
again, like I say, Evan is
Lot
here
of
this
data
evening.
there.
Yeah, that was a good 3 inches anyway.
Yeah.
Gentlemen. Yeah.
Good
The
evening,
floor is
folks.
yours.
All right, my name is Nick Golan. I'm a licensed engineer and principal with TF Moran. I'm here this evening with TF Moran's president and chief engineer, Bob Duvall, for the purposes of reviewing the Village on Technology Hill traffic study. John stole all my thunder with a great preface, so I don't have a lot to say other
Perfect,
than...
thank you for coming.
That's fantastic.
Wow, all right, I've been here too often already. Good to know. And on that note, Bob, if you would, I know the board is very aware of what this project consists of. If there's questions, comments, or otherwise, I can certainly fill in any details. But in that we're here for traffic and traffic alone, I'll hand it over to Bob to speak to that element.
Thanks, Nick. John, could we put up the slides that I had
He ran out.
given?
This will be a quick executive summary from that huge volume.
So, was it?
I'm going to hit the high points.
Something in particular, Bob?
Just go to the file, it's named Village Slides, I think.
I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I'm not as computer savvy as I appear. I'm good looking, but I'm not computer savvy.
don't seem computer savvy.
I am. I'm not. Trust me. You're the first one to admit it. Thank
This
you.
right here, Nick?
Yeah, it's in there, that's it. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Jake. We can
Hey,
sit right here if you
Not a
want.
problem. Oh, no, no. I'll leave this to the guy with 10 hats.
Yeah.
Are you part-time in the IT staff?
Yeah. All right. Go ahead, gentlemen. I might actually have to sit down there until he comes back.
All right. So the first slide here is just a sort of an overall picture of the master plan itself, so you can see the correlation of the different pieces. There's a residential component on the west. Thank you, Jake.
Not a problem.
There's a manufacturing component on the east, and then there's a commercial component, which is the orange-colored things, which is a daycare center, an office, a small office, and a small shopping plaza. So that all together makes up the project, the Village on Technology Hill, mixed-use project. Because it has all those elements, there's also, in addition to the normal trip generation that John talked about, which you consult.
I'm sorry. Is there somewhere where, before you get started,
Yeah.
get into the weeds, is there a slide that shows me and the general public the relationship between this project and the main road, the main thoroughfare before you turn into
Yep.
the development? Because I think how this is set up, I think is important for people to see
So you're looking for something.
where it is, but more importantly, where it
That's
isn't.
the slide right there, Jake. Thanks.
Hey,
Hey, I got it, Mike.
you want to be
Don't
the
worry
top
about
player?
Taking your hats. He's being IT.
So if you could point, Mike, thank you for coming back. It was just I. But if you could point to where the main thoroughfare is, name the road for me, please.
Sure.
And then show how you get into this development. And I think that sets people up for where you are, basically.
Absolutely, thank you.
you.
So, Mike, could you zoom to the full extent of that slide?
Bit wider?
Yeah, a little, there you are. Maybe zoom in a little bit tighter so we can read the words, thanks. All right, so basically the whole site is east of the airport, at the north end of town, north of Grenier Field Road and west of New Hampshire 28. They're all labeled on this slide, which hopefully everybody can see. And I've highlighted in yellow the outline of the project that had, and roughly the industrial components on the north and east, the commercial at the northwest corner, and the residential in the west part of the site. There's 2 access ways to the site, and the site is ringed by, well, Abbey Road, let's say, on the north, Harvey Road on the west, New Hampshire 28 and Mammoth Road on the east, and Grenier Field Road on the south. And then off the page, but a significant contributor to traffic in this area is Pettingill Road, which is just to the lower left of the slide. So that's the global view. And of course, further east of New Hampshire 28 is I-93 and 293 farther north and so on. I think everybody's probably familiar with the major roads. So I hope this helps
So,
identify where we are with this
thank you,
project.
Mr. Chair. So to be clear, so the 2 ways into this site are up this road, which is called Kitty Hawk Landing.
Correct,
Your buildings will be up here. This,
Correct.
I think, is what we call the Londonderry School District office.
correct.
On the ground floor, and then there's the owner up top, whatever it is. The other way to get in is to continue down Harvey Road, up Akira, where the arrow is, up Akira, then take a right onto the road where the circle is.
Right.
Which is gonna be where the 2 buildings are that we talked about last meeting. One is a daycare, I think, and one is a
retail plaza.
a little retail, whatever you decide is gonna
Right.
go in there. So my point is, and I've been saying it, and people have been asking me, but I've been saying it since your first production meeting, that this is off the road.
Yes,
And you will see some of it, you will see it because of the elevation, but you really won't see it as if you could drive by it 100 times and not see it.
Yeah.
Particularly the 2 initial buildings that are going in. So
Right.
thank you for setting that up, I appreciate it.
sure. And you've also helped me out a little bit explaining how you get into the site through Akira Way in the north and Kitty Hawk Landing in the south. And I'm going to get into more details, but suffice it to say, Akira Way is seen as the front door of this project, and Kitty Hawk Landing is an alternate access and also the truck route into the project. So trucks wouldn't be going through Akira Way, trucks would be going through Kitty Hawk Landing.
And
The
Bob,
little-
just for clarification though, too, Tony, again, the other way to get in there would be off of Technology Drive.
Yes,
Okay, a little further north of Akira,
Got it?
see it?
Yes.
Take a right on Akira, on Technology, you come to a
Yep.
T, you'd hang a left, go up Akira, that's kind of the third way to get off of Harvey and Grenier Field.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
yeah, and while we're talking about ways in and out of the project, remember, this project is really about residential and manufacturing. There's a small bit of commercial involved. We just talked about daycare, shopping plaza, office. Well, that's really supportive of the other 2 elements. The 2 main elements are residential and manufacturing, so houses or homes and jobs. And those people, go there every day, essentially, to, from, every day, one or the other. So they're gonna be familiar with this, they're gonna find the best ways in, and that's, how they're gonna be using it. There's not gonna be a lot of people looking for the daycare center, for example.
Right, and so to that point, for clarity's sake, Thank you, Mr. Chair. The fact is, because of how it's situated and the way into it, let's stay with the Akira Way, it's far enough off the beaten track that the general public really has very little use to go in there. They can, it's not that they can't, but a lot of thousands of cars going back and forth there every day won't even know it's there, unless they happen in there the first time and see it, or they see an advertisement or whatever. The majority of it will be servicing your clientele, your workers or whatever in the facility, the residential people that live there, and trust me, people will find a new daycare. So those could be new clients if you allow them or not allow them. You can do whatever you want because it's a private facility. But so thank you.
Bob, before you keep going, just real quick, housekeeping item. I did forget to check this for completeness because I was so excited to go look at that slide while Mike was gone. So I am looking for a motion to accept this as complete.
Mr. Chair, I will make a motion that this particular application is complete.
Motion from Art, do I have a second?
Second that, Mr. Chair.
Second from Lynn, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative, and this has been accepted as complete. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. So while we have this slide up, the circles represent the study area that John talked about at the beginning. Those are the 9 intersections that we studied to determine what the traffic impacts would be on the neighborhood. A couple points that I'd like to make before we go further. Number one is, because there's so many entry points to this area, to this site, and by entry points I mean to the network that we studied, there's at least 4 major entry points, really 5 counting Pettingill Road. That distributes the traffic quite a bit. So the next slide shows what the trip generation is. So maybe we can go to that slide. And actually, it might be before this, Mike. Yeah, right there, thanks. So in the residential component, 400 odd units, there's 160 trips generated in the AM, 140 trips generated in the PM. And I lumped the commercial together for simplicity. In the commercial part, that's office, daycare, plaza, there's 110 trips in the AM, 170 trips in the PM. Then finally, in the manufacturing, based on square footage, there's 220 trips AM and 230 trips PM, and these are rounded numbers. So the total AM is just under 500 trips, and the total PM is 540 trips. But when you divide that trips between, entering and leaving, and having a balance of residential and manufacturing helps that balance, because residential is typically going somewhere, leaving in the morning and coming back in the evening, and manufacturing, just like all employment centers, is typically receiving trips in the morning and distributing trips out in the PM. So what it ends up being is a fairly close, not quite 50-50, but close to 50-50 balance of trips. So you don't have a slug leaving like you would have with say a giant office building, and then a slug arriving. It's spread out more evenly. So we can take these 500 odd trips, divide them in half for coming and going, and then divide them by 4 or 5, depending which direction they're coming from or going to. So really, we're loading the entry points of the area of the network by less than 100 trips, essentially, in any one direction at any of the points. So what that does is that very even distribution of trips really helps to be sort of a self-mitigating factor. And you'll see that as we get to the end of this presentation, that the difference in traffic, level of service, delay, queue, volume to capacity ratios are very little, really, considering that you're adding 500 trips to this area. Because of this, I'm going to say because of this site selection, which adapts itself very well to even distribution of trips. Another thing that helps to reduce external trips is the interaction between residential, commercial, and manufacturing. In this case, because the commercial is so small, there's only a small reduction in trips due to that interaction. And that interaction is basically, in this case, people who live there because they want to work there, and people who work there want to look for a place to live. So people who both live and work there don't actually enter the outside roadway. The ITE has a procedure to follow to calculate that. It's based on the square footage of the sizes of the different components, of what the different components are. In this case, those numbers that I read off are net of what the ITE tells you, which was about 15 or 20% reduction in trips due to internal capture. It's saying 15% of the trips are already there because they live there or work.
Stay within that development.
Exactly. My personal feeling, my professional judgment tells me that that number is probably low. And, one of the reasons that the owners of these major components are here in proposing this project is because they see this as being a lot more symbiotic, and that there should be actually a higher internal capture with more employees living there and working there and so forth. So keeping that in mind, I think this is sort of a worst case snapshot of trips that we would expect from this development. And it's likely to be even more self-sufficient than IT would suggest. So with that in mind, next slide, we've already seen. This shows the distribution of trips externally. And you can see in the upper left, so these would be trips to from the north. They're going to be coming down Harvey Road in the main, because that's really the most direct way into the site from the north. So we'd have about 33% of the trips to from the north. And this is sort of an average of residential traffic, manufacturing traffic, and the other uses combined for the sake of simplicity. We have 40% coming to from the south and west, because the eastbound traffic from the west is going to be coming from Pettingill as well as Point South. And then over on the lower right of the slide, you can see we have 20% coming up on New Hampshire 28, and then 6% coming up at Mammoth Road. And these numbers are not just picked out of the air, but they're based on existing trip patterns, background traffic in the area. Now, the area is already fairly well developed with a lot of manufacturing and commercial uses, so we think existing trip patterns are a pretty good, reliable indication of where additional trips are going to come, both journey to work trips and commercial trips and industrial trips. Because there's not that much residential in the area, we actually looked at the census data to see where employees are likely to come from that don't already live there, of course. And we use that census data and those travel patterns to help build our residential network. But it all comes together basically with a third to from the north, and then 2/3 to from the south and east and west, for that matter, that you see distributed here. The blue numbers represent the entry points to the site. So of total site traffic, about 74% is going to be coming through Akira Way, which, as I mentioned, is the front door. That's a combination of the 33 from the north and the 40 from the southwest. And then 26% are going to be coming in Kitty Hawk Landing. That's a combination of all the trucks and the people coming, from northbound on New Hampshire 28 and Mammoth Road. So, next slide, please. This is the separate distribution of trucks. And again, it's very comparable to the cars. And we also counted trucks separately from cars in background traffic as a check on our assumptions of where truck traffic goes to and from, and this is the result of that. So roughly very close to cars, 30% to from the north, 46% to from the southwest, 18% and 6% coming from New Hampshire 28. And the reason there's no truck traffic on Mammoth Road, of course, is that's not a truck route. So they have to come from 28 if they're coming off of the.
You're saying
network.
18% is coming north on 28 and 6% is coming south on
South.
28?
Right.
Thank you.
Yep. So that combines into all of the trucks coming into the Kitty Hawk Landing driveway, as opposed to the 2 access points. Next slide, please.
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. So a quick question, so go back to the previous slide. So L3 Harris is up there, and so you're gonna have trucks delivering material up there. What's stopping them from making a left-hand turn and coming through the development if they're coming down at Kira Way?
So there is appropriate signage in place for that deterrent. It is going to be signed as a private road, no through traffic. Specific to the areas of the residential intersection points will also be signed no through traffic and also no trucks for that purpose. So signage will be a key element to make sure that we have folks traveling where they're supposed to.
Yes, sir.
If we can go back to the previous slide, though, yeah, there you go. I just, it seems counterintuitive that the 40% of the people coming from Pettingill Road will go to the stop at Grenier Field and wait at the light to turn right onto Akira, rather than just taking the left, or I'm sorry, turning left onto Akira, onto Grenier Field or Harvey, versus taking the right at the red and turning immediately up to Kitty Hawk. Does that?
Well, it is based on existing traffic patterns and travel routes, but essentially, residential trips are expected to use Akira Way because that way you don't have to wind your way through the longer Kitty Hawk Landing path. It is a little bit longer, and it's more of an industrial entrance to the site. So if your question is people coming to from the southwest are more likely to turn left at Grenier Field Road and head up and either enter at Akira Way or more likely, if you're coming from the south, and join with the 33% coming from the north, making a left turn onto Technology Hill, which is the road with a curve in it that comes from the intersection with a star down into Akira Way. So that's where the 74% comes from. Yeah, there could be some percentage of that turning right on Grenier Field Road and then making the left. But actually making a right turn to enter the site is that much easier than making a left turn to enter the site. So I think that also plays into why the existing distribution is like that.
Bob, I think you can also look to the manner in which the traffic patterns have been laid out internal to the development. As you come in off of Akira, that is the throughway. You are not bound by a stop sign, versus if you're coming in off of Kitty Hawk Landing, you're going to have to go through multiple stop signs in order to get to the residential area or even the retail childcare area. So we've set up the traffic patterns to promote the use of Akira Way for our residential offerings.
And one other thing too, Jason, I think and again, like Bob says, it's based on existing traffic patterns out there as well. So
Correct.
That's,
But I mean, existing traffic patterns right now would have no reason to go up Kitty Hawk, so.
correct. So that, like you say, intuitively, you wouldn't think that,
Yeah,
just so you
I
understand.
wouldn't wait, but I,
Well, as Nick pointed out, it was a conscious decision to try to influence traffic to use the Akira Way as the main way in. That's why we're calling it the front door. That's where the bulk of the landscaping is. That's where the signage is. That's the sort of the pretty face of the project. So, we're making that, making every effort to make that the main entrance to the site.
all right, thank you.
And what Bob needs to say is all of our buildings are very pretty, and our architects have done a wonderful job. I'm not sure if they're in the audience, but I digress. Bob, please continue.
Just talking about the
Well
landscape.
done, well done.
So, next slide, please. And this is the truck distribution that we just talked about. Next slide, please. All right, and here we're getting into the actual analysis part of the traffic study, which probably makes up 80% of the 2 inches of thickness that a typical traffic study has. And that's, the letters represent level of service, A, B, C, D, E, F, kind of like a report card at school. A is great, F not so much. So the letters in white, and there's a pair of letters at each intersection, except for the actual site driveway coming off of the Cure Way that only has a single blue number, and that's because that doesn't exist, so there's no background level of service to compare it to. But all the others have a pair. The white letter represents the existing level of service, and then the one in blue represents the proposed or the build case level of service. The level of service is based essentially on delay, with A being low delay, B being the next, and C, D, E, and F in the case of an unsignalized intersection is over 50 seconds of delay. And in an unsignalized intersection, which most of these are, is 50 seconds of delay, and then a signalized intersection that's 80 seconds of delay. So they're arbitrary. There's no perceptible difference. Just one slides into the other. You couldn't tell driving through an intersection whether that was A, B, C, D, E. You can usually tell what's an F because you'd notice that. But again, is it a 50-second F or is it a 300-second F? They're both F. And in this case, you can see by these letter scores that everything is really favorable. A, B, C, D are considered favorable. D, E, and F is failure, are acceptable to failure depending on how bad it is. A better judge of this, I don't spend a lot of time on letter LOS because they are so arbitrary and really almost meaningless when you get into congested conditions. But this slide shows that we really don't have traffic problems here. The one indication that there is a little bit of a problem is down at Grenier Field Road and Mammoth and Page Road at that stop sign. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm not going to talk about that now because there's a separate discussion about that. But other than that, everything is a favorable level of service. And what these represent is future year conditions. These are 2035 conditions. So in addition to the trips we're adding, on top of the background growth, which is already adjusted for seasonal adjustment factors and COVID adjustment factors, it's 10 years out, and these are the results that we're showing 10 years out. The next slide will show some other parameters here. But in addition to showing the 10-year out condition, we're also showing the worst case. Those weren't overall levels of service. They were the worst case, typically the left turn or the exiting movement, stop controlled exiting movement. So the overall is much better than those numbers. That's just the worst case approach to the intersection. The one that's controlled by the stop sign, the one where you have to wait for a couple of gaps to make a left turn. And there's still ABC level of service. So that's, a very favorable result. And I probably could stop there, but I want to show a little more detail of that so that you understand the analysis that went into this and what perhaps some more relevant measures of effectiveness of intersection operations are. And this slide here shows the volume to capacity ratio of the, can you show a little bit more of the bottom there? That's the VC ratio is what it's called. And what it does is it looks at the capacity of the intersection. And again, in this slide here, I've taken the worst approach. So the worst approach, for example, coming out of Akira Drive onto Harvey Road is that approach because it's affected by a stop sign. There's really no delay to traffic on Harvey Road. So the capacity of Harvey Road is much, much more than the stop-controlled approach. So I looked at the worst case, this is future year worst case of each of these intersections. But again, if you look at the values of the numbers here, the ones that show the big differences, like 12 to 26 on Harvey Road at Technology, that's because, that's essentially the front door of our project. So all of our traffic leaving from that end, which as you remember is 74%, is using that intersection. So that's why there's a difference from 12 to 26. But think about this a little bit more and you realize that even in the future year, 10 years out, with 74% of the project traffic going through that intersection, looking at the worst approach of that intersection, we still are only using 26% of the available capacity, which means at that particular intersection, there's 74% more capacity for other development or more intense development coming out there. It's probably unlikely that will ever happen, but it's also showing the benefits of an even distribution of traffic around the compass and internal capture of the site, and the fact that the existing roadway network out there is just not that saturated. It's not, close to its saturation. That's where you start seeing levels of service F frequently, and VC ratios approaching 1, meaning no capacity left. So if it's 26% in the build condition, that leaves 74% slack for future development. And then if you go down through the network, going down Harvey Road, you see existing 21 and 50 at Akira Way. Again, that's one of our access points, accounting for most of that difference. Going down to the lower left at Webster and Harvey, you see 48% existing, 66%. Even there, which is probably one of the highest volume intersections, the other being New Hampshire 28, of course, there's still over a third additional capacity after future year in the worst case approach to that intersection. A very favorable result. Then you go up a little farther to Grenier Field Roads, 62 to 68%, very little difference. And go down a little bit further to the Kitty Hawk, 19%, 56%. Even on Grenier Field Road, which is, probably the one that has the heaviest traffic, we still have almost half the capacity left after this project is built and fully occupied. And then going out a little farther, 52%, 68% on the Mammoth Road stop sign. And then out to New Hampshire 28th, only a 3% difference out there at that signalized intersection. So those are VC ratios. I think those are the most telling statistics that you can really grasp what's really going on at that intersection. Anything less than 80% is generally considered favorable and within capacity, and no need to look at mitigation and that sort of thing. And we're nowhere near those levels. So this project fits comfortably in the existing network and has room to spare for future development, either on-site or off-site. And then here is one of 2 intersections where we're proposing to add left turn lanes. Now, left turn lanes, and John mentioned this in his opening remarks, are something that's determined from warrants. The Federal Highway has put together some equations, essentially, that compare the number of left turns as a proportion of opposing traffic and advancing traffic at unsignalized intersections to determine when you should consider putting in a left turn lane. And so we did that as part of our traffic study. And we found 2 places where the warrants are met. And that would suggest that a left turn lane should be considered. And we're not just considering it, but we're proposing it as part of the mitigation of this project to construct them at, in this case here, we're looking at the, that's Akira.
It's technology.
So that's technology, right? That's technology.
This
and
is
Harvey Road.
technology, yeah.
So that's the left turn at the top of the network diagram. And then the next slide shows the same thing here. We're proposing a left turn lane. Here is Kitty Hawk. And, traffic coming from basically west to east there. We'd be creating a left turn pocket so they can get out of the way of traffic before they make their left turn onto Kitty Hawk Landing. Now, I want to point out parenthetically that these left turn warrants really don't have much to do with capacity or delay at an intersection. The purpose of the left turn warrant is just to preserve the capacity of the through movements so that when you get to a certain level, you give the traffic a place to step out of the traffic stream so that through movements can go through unimpeded. But if you recall what the previous slide showed, these already work fairly well. So they're not to improve the capacity of the intersection necessarily, it's just to reduce delays to through traffic at these two intersections. So it's, in my opinion, it's not really a necessary factor when you're just barely meeting those warrants. And that's why the language is to start considering them. It is just sort of a belt and suspenders to make sure that there's not going to be congestion at those two intersections. So that's what we've done. We're proposing that as part mitigation of our project. And if you go back to the one of the early slides, Mike, you can see right there. You can see I put a little asterisk at the two intersections that have the proposed left turns. Technology Drive and Harvey Road, and then at the bottom, Kitty Hawk and Grenier Field.
Hold on one sec, Paul.
So why not Akira at Harvey with the left turn off of southbound Harvey?
Well, and that was actually a comment. And actually, I'm going to use that as a segue into that comment. So the Stantec review of the traffic study, they gave us two reviews, actually. The first review was we made adjustments to the report, we submitted it, and then they gave us a second review, which we just received earlier this week. And so we had a meeting with John and Mike and went over these comments and wanted to make sure that we had everything wrapped up for tonight so that we can present basically agreement between the parties, the town's consultant and ourselves about how the traffic should work, and that's what we've done here. And one of the comments was, and I'll just read it, warrant analysis talking about the same left turn issue. Stantec finds this is the comment from Stantec to the town. Stantec finds no fault with the current assumption of northern distribution between Technology Drive and Akira Way to and from Harvey Road. And that's talking about the split of traffic that we had a question about earlier, how many are going to use Technology, how many are going to use Akira Way. We believe most of the traffic is going to use Technology Drive rather than Akira Way because a fair amount of that traffic is coming from the north. And Stantec goes on to say, however, Stantec will note that upon full operation of the village and shifting of driver behavior for these roadways, there is a chance that traffic may see changes in intersection turn lane warrant results of Harvey Road or Akira Way and should be monitored for operations upon full build-out. So what they're really saying is it's not clear whether the left turn lane should be put at Technology or at Akira Way, and that should be further studied. So we agreed amongst us all, the town, ourselves and Stantec, and we recommend as a condition of approval for this board, should you approve this tonight, is that allow town staff to work, allow TF Moran to work with town staff and Stantec to look at conditions in the field and determine which of those two intersections makes more sense to put this left turn lane in. And we're prepared to do that as a result of
So you're proposing only one of the two intersections?
one of the
and
two
not both?
intersections. Because, and for a couple of reasons.
Not
One,
three.
we feel that Technology Hill is the right one, just because that's where most of the traffic is turning now. And there's really no travel time advantage to use Acura Way as opposed to that, and it's more of a straight shot without stop signs. And maybe just as important is that
Can you
when you put
Hold on one
the,
sec. So you're saying right now, as traffic patterns are right now, there is currently more traffic coming out of Technology Hill than Akira Way,
yes.
is what
What
today's
we're saying,
existing
right.
condition is.
And then, traffic coming from the north is going to typically turn, and remember that these people are going to and from this site every day, so they know the site and they know how to get there. It typically takes the first access point, all other things being equal, that it can take. So the first driveway at a gas station, the first roadway into a major development like this. So that's another reason why we think most of the traffic is gonna use technology rather than Akira. But
One
after,
sec, Mr. D.
So, before you continue, I'm sorry to interrupt. We have the Stantec representative here. Could we have him
Yeah.
restate his position for
Yeah.
Stantec?
Absolutely,
Just so it's on the record?
absolutely.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Evan Drew with Stantec. I have been reviewing Town of Londonderry traffic studies for the last few years, and recently studied T.F. Moran's study here. Everything he's saying is pretty clear. What I can actually share, because we do have a slide, if you want to show the distribution. So where that comment specifically regarding, Akira versus Technology Way came from is in the study, the percentage breakdown is even more detailed between each of those intersections, right? So this is, basically the distribution as you go off the page. But in the page, you still have some of those breakdowns that are summarized of how they're entering and exiting like this whole study area. From the study, I guess I just closed the book, but about 26%, if I remember right, of people are using Technology Way, and 7% are using Technology Drive, and about 7% are using Akira Way. Again, today, based on the existing traffic that, again, agreed they collected, and with their backup of census data for Journey to Work. So again, there's not really much residential here. They're building residential. How are we sure where people are coming and going from? The U.S. Census helps with that. Then separately, when they were doing their turn lane warrant analyses, it is a calculation, and also it's provided a graph. So it plots on the graph, and there's usually a line, which is the threshold of consider warranting the left turn lane. So again, the build traffic placed basically that point above the threshold based on their assumptions at Technology Drive and at Kitty Hawk. We had them, again, going back to the importance of a good scoping meeting, we asked for them to look at the turn lanes at Akira as well, since, again, the frontage is on Akira. Will it make sense for that to actually be where people are intending to go? And it was just below that threshold line. So our initial comment from our first submittal was, well, if you're close, what if your distribution was, say 20% and 10%? Does that 3% mean that now you need 2 left turn lanes? So that's kind of back engineering for them, and we didn't want to do that. So for this review, and again, they responded to that, and we agreed that, let's go with the assumptions. We've accepted those assumptions. Let's go with that. But our comment came back to say, when this thing is built out, maybe some of those behaviors may change, and you may see additional pressure at Akira Way. So that's why our suggestion was to monitor for the future for specifically to Akira. But again, in the conversation between John and T.F. Moran, let's discuss. Maybe it does make sense to put it at Akira. Maybe that induces demand. There's kind of all these other factors that, again, with planning and the traffic studies, there's a lot of assumptions. There is a lot of math. There is a lot of science and data. But there is kind of this area where you try to predict the behaviors as best as possible. So we just wanted to make sure that that was kind of in the record to say, hey, let's keep an eye on this intersection and, see what happens moving forward as this potentially develops. So
When you look at the turning lane that is being proposed at Technology, again, it crosses over Navigator. So again, we have to look at all the intersections out there.
correct, yeah. So it's not necessarily. I appreciated that Bob brought in volume to capacity ratios. Again, this is nerdy traffic talk. I love that. I agree. Letter grades are, it's tough to really talk through those. So I appreciate the volume to capacity ratio stuff. But yeah, there's other factors with those left turn lanes, right? It's easy to put on a two-dimensional plane. This is where you can draw it out, but there's other factors, grades, drainage, utility. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it. So I think it's appreciative of both, towns, John and myself at Stantec to, that there's potential for discussions to maybe work together, work together to share what's the best solution for the town and the site itself.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anything, Mr. D?
Yeah, while I'm up here.
We have John weigh in on that, because there seems to be, you had a meeting and everyone agrees that you're gonna take a look at something and make a decision at some point,
Correct.
somehow, some way, and you're happy with that and satisfied with that?
Yeah. Having looked at the traffic and knowing what's out there, it's,
The assumption of Technology Drive being the way it is makes sense. There's 4 driveways of existing manufacturing out there. It makes sense that when you're coming south on Harvey Road, that most of the people will take that left. Because, and we actually discussed this, because of existing wetlands, because of existing grades, Akira doesn't really have that development potential until the site came. So there's not necessarily the induced demand to use Akira today that now the development may incur. But again, they're not saying no one's using it. They did apply, there is people who are going to use that. I think being so close to some of those thresholds, again, with all the other growth factors and all these factors that we're putting on top of it that we understand TF Moran did and appreciated, we're so close to one of those thresholds. Let's talk about maybe other factors that could influence where the right place is for that lane. So
just an observation, I was up there today, just kind of taking a look, lay of the land, and there's no shoulder on Harvey at Akira, or it might be 2 feet. And then there's a guardrail right off of Harvey as well, so there's no opportunity for, I know I never go around people on the right-hand side when they're making a left turn right. So there's
You're
no-
the one.
I'm the one. With the dirty side of the car, right? So there's no opportunity to go around on the right-hand side, the way the road is configured today. So I think that, I still think, in my mind, a left turn lane there is warranted. And, if we do it now, we do it down the road. I think we'll do it down the road. So why not do it up front? My observation.
it just like Bob was saying, it has the opportunity to get traffic out of the moving, the moving through traffic. And here especially, there's such a high percentage of truck traffic that's trying to take those lefts that are 65, 75 feet long. That does take quite a bit of space if they're not able to find a gap in the traffic. So the storage lanes, again, like he said, because of the way the volume to capacity ratios are, you're not necessarily putting everyone in another lane just to find a place to store them. It's let's get that truck, again, it's going to be manufacturing and there's already industrial out there. Let's get that truck out of the way. Potential, there's other factors, safety factors and things like that are considered when deciding an intersection. So
Does the truck traffic up to L3 Harris use Akira Way, or does that use Technology Drive? Going to the loading docks?
if you want to look at the traffic, maybe for distribution for trucks, it might, I forget.
I can give you a accurate answer here in a minute.
While he's looking that up, Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
what does it mean when it says right at the end of the response letter that just came in the other day, or whatever it was, it says at the bottom from the developer, we understand that any improvements related to the intersection observations will not be the responsibility of the developer.
That's a separate item to what we were talking about.
Okay, so we'll get to that later?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
That's not as big a deal as it sounds.
Okay. If it's not attached to what we're talking about now.
It is not.
then it probably will make sense, because right now it doesn't.
Okay.
So thank you. I'll
Yeah,
wait.
Out of context.
I'm almost patient.
Another question in my mind, Tony. Really mean.
So in answer to the question of what trucks are doing now, existing trucks at Technology, we have no trucks turning at Technology and no trucks turning at Akira Way. So during peak hours in the AM, we have no truck activity on either. On the PM,
They're coming in non-peak.
we have,
That's pretty common.
Yeah.
You know, trucking companies will choose to
not put them at peak hours. Yeah, and
it
I,
happens at FedEx, UPS, right? You know I work with John on Pettingill, hearing about the FedEx trucks all coming out in their platoons, you know, at 6:30 in the morning or something like that. So that's why, you know, we're looking at peak hour. It's not necessarily indicative that there's nothing ever going on. It
It's
just may
not saying
be
the
the
day,
news.
it's saying during
Right.
peak hour.
right, these are 7 to 9 and 4 to 6 hours. And the same thing in the PM. There's 2 through trucks in each direction on both intersections, but nobody's making any turns in the peak hour.
Yeah, so to be clear, this truck's coming in, and the study is not saying there's no trucks. And a lay person reading your reports that doesn't read close enough to see that it says peak, gets the impression that there's no trucks. Clearly, that's not true. They're just not coming in at peak hours. It might be 2 in the morning, it might be 5 in the morning, it might be 10 o'clock at night, but it's not peak. So,
That's exactly right.
And John, you would say that's pretty standard for truck traffic now?
For that area, you
Yeah.
know, again, and they have it.
Yeah.
And I believe the site plan regulations even have a dictation about, one of the items is take a look at your truck traffic, and if it's over a certain percentage, you really have to start looking about where those things
Right.
are heading.
Yeah, that's specifically provided for in the state guidelines for traffic studies about what to do when you're not seeing trucks in a certain movement.
Okay.
So that was followed in this report. There's a couple of things I think that were said, and I just want to emphasize them because I think it goes to the heart of the question that we're discussing here, is where to put this left turn lane. Number one is when you're close, other factors enter into the decision, such as geometry, the proximity of other intersections, the grades, the available right-of-way, the amount of telephone poles that have to be moved, and all those sort of things play into deciding where it makes the most sense to put the left turn lane. The other thing, and Evan referred to it as induced demand, is when you put the left turn lane there, that makes an attractive place to make a left turn. So, whichever one you pick is going to influence driver behavior in the future. And that if it's a 50-50 choice, do I make my left here or I go down the road a little further to make it later? Wherever you choose to put that left turn is going to attract those left turn, and especially where you might have trucks involved, to be able to pull out of the stream and not get honked at. So I think between those two factors, a visit to the site between the three of us, town, ourselves, and Stantec, to determine which is the appropriate place to put this left turn lane will be productive, and we'd accept that as a condition of this approval, should we get there tonight.
So just one more observation then, if Technology Way is the place to put the left turn lane, would it make any sense at all to put the stop sign instead of at Technology and Akira, to put, it's on Technology now at Akira, but to move the stop sign over to Akira, just to give another inducement for people to use Technology Drive?
It doesn't, from a traffic operations point of view, it doesn't make a difference.
So I'm gonna take the path of least resistance if I'm going there,
Yeah.
especially if I know the roads.
But I would, before I venture an opinion on that, I would want to see that intersection in the field with that in mind and decide, what's the right one. It has to do with sight distance and a number of other factors, in addition to just convenience of drivers.
Good. Thank you, sir. Anything else for Evan while he's up?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Problem.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's definitely good.
Well, I think we went through the slides, so I'm pretty much at the point where I think we can move on to the rest of this letter, the other items in this letter. So it's a short letter. I think the easiest thing to do is just to read and it's sort of a bridge as I read to keep it simple. The first item has to do with heavy vehicles, meaning trucks. There was a comment about the number of trucks and the routing of trucks that we talked about. Stantec found it acceptable, and that comment is closed. The next one had to do with the level of service analysis, and Stantec said that after review of the updated analysis, the resolution is acceptable, and Table 4 has been updated to reflect these updates included in the appendix. There were some minor errors in transposition from the synchro into the tables. However, they don't drastically change the overall results and will be corrected in a final submission for a complete record. And we agree that we will correct those items in the final record traffic study. The next is the warrant analysis that we just talked about. I think we've talked about that fully. And the resolution is that the town's consultant and ourselves are going to meet in the field to verify which is the appropriate place, all things considered, to put the left turn lane that we're going to be putting on Harvey Road. The next is accident evaluation, and Stantec found that resolution of that item to be acceptable as well. The next has to do with when the mitigation is instituted. And Stantec reviewed the level of service analysis, et cetera, and found the left turn lane concepts to be suitable for further discussion and to be designed as part of any future approvals. So they were recommending that be done before construction, but we discussed with John instead to make a condition of approval for these offsite improvements that they be constructed prior to a certificate of occupancy for the first building, rather than
That being either the residential or the manufacturing. Those are our drivers. That's our traffic that we're generating. So tying those off-site improvements to a COO for those made a lot of sense. And that was deemed as an agreeable alternative.
and would allow construction to begin that much sooner and still provide a safeguard that the improvements have to be in place before those buildings are open. So that was the resolution of that item. And then I mentioned at the outset there was more to talk about with Mammoth Road, Page Road, Grenier Field Road, that we understand that the town has already implemented some traffic calming measures with an intent to reduce traffic along Mammoth Road. So what we had done in this traffic study in a response to a comment from Stantec to improve the level of service on Mammoth Road was to recommend a four-way stop. But improving the level of service on Mammoth Road by installing a four-way stop runs directly counter to the town's already in process traffic calming measures, which is to discourage traffic from using Mammoth Road. So I think
Leave it alone.
best thing to do is just to let the town continue with its traffic calming project and leave it alone.
So just a reminder, guys, again, we had the traffic scoping meeting back in January, then things transpired. Town council enacted the traffic calming measures. Feedback that I've personally gotten is it's working, so let's leave it alone. Plain and simple.
Stop signs are working?
Oh, to be clear, they call me Stop Sign Tony. I had nothing to do with that. Those were not my stop signs. That was way before I got on a mission. So I just want to be clear about that. Those are not mine.
Then there's three additional comments. Number one is just pointing out that the traffic report And the PUD itself identifies bicycle, recreation trails, conservation trails, all to be built in the future once a residential development is established. And Stantec is just noting that these would be part of future project submissions, and the team agrees that that will be the case. Then there was a discussion of a bus stop on the, which is shown on the project plans. You've probably already seen it with the infrastructure submission.
We had great discussion on that.
So at a minimum, that would be a bus stop for children living in the project. And we've also opened the avenues of communication with Manchester Transit Authority to evaluate the feasibility of making it a transit bus stop at the same time. So they've described in general terms the process by which that happens. We will continue with that process. And if it turns out that it falls in line with MTA's policies for adding a bus stop and it makes sense to add it there, then this will become a transit stop in addition to a bus stop. But at a minimum, it will be a bus stop. And then lastly, our submission report includes observations of existing conditions of pavement markings, signage, site distance, and on, just sort of existing conditions of the intersection. As part of the study, comments are made that, for example, the striping is worn out at this intersection. Some brush has grown in at that intersection, interfering with sight distance. And in one particular case, we noted that there were several generations of trench patching, one on top of the other, that was causing some cracking and pavement distress at the technology intersection. And Stantec was suggesting that that be made part of our mitigation, but really these are routine maintenance items. We've discussed it with the town, and it's not really, even though they were within the study area, I mean, we're just, really passers-by through these intersections, and we didn't see it as the responsibility of the developer to do this maintenance work that needs to be done in any event on an ongoing basis by the town. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, John, but you can take it from here.
We'll try. Some of those improvements will be taken care of in some of these intersection improvements, so.
Thanks, John. Those weren't the words I would have put in your mouth.
I put it in my mouth. I just put it out of my mouth. So,
But I guess the end cap on that is it is resolved amongst all parties.
correct.
Those would be typical maintenance items conducted by DPW.
Right. Thanks, Nick. And that was the last comment. So essentially, with the exception of the one that we're suggesting be a condition of approval tonight, they're all resolved, and we will meet at the staff level to go out and work out what the best place to put a left turn lane is on Harvey Road.
Mr. Chair, there was a letter submitted, I
Yes.
think. Does that need to be read into the record?
It does. We'll get to that when we open up to public comment here. I figure
Okay.
once we get through that, we can read that into record. Being a public hearing, I will open up public comment. Or do we want to go through the board? Or you want to go to public comment first? Let's go through the board and then we'll open up public comment. So, John, I'll start with you, sir. You're in the hot seat.
I'm all set right now. We can
You're
just-
satisfied.
You heard those, hoping everybody walks away with, again, a little more knowledge of traffic and how we look at it,
Absolutely.
But again, this is addressing this development,
Absolutely.
and again, just things continue to grow, so
Absolutely.
We're all different, each one's different.
you got it, yeah.
Mike.
So we build on it.
I am all set, other than to say that I applaud John and Stantec for a reasonable traffic review. I thought the Stantec memo was very readable and straightforward and understandable, and I think that's great. And I thank John for the overview about how this all works.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. Anything from the board?
I think before the public talks, I think this is, has turned into, it was shaky in the beginning, but this has turned into an example of how the system can work in its current format, where the developer, Stantec, staff are all working symbiotically. SAT word, Jake.
What are those?
So that
Logistically.
so that a project has the ability to move forward in a way that makes sense, that everybody can understand. Not everyone's going to agree with everything, but it certainly brings out all the facts that didn't used to come out. And I think this is a great example of how it can work when everybody's talking to everybody all at the same time. So I commend the applicant, Stantec, and town staff who have put in thousands and thousands of hours on this project, and so my thanks for that. It makes our job easier as well.
Absolutely. Lynn, you look like you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so I gotta go back to the left turn lane at Akira Way. So what is the agreement on the need for a left turn lane? We're going to leave it as is for the foreseeable future until traffic dictates we do something different?
Well, we want to take a look at, what makes what makes more sense. Is it a technology or Akira?
Yep, and so that will be determined when we sign off on the COO. And at that point in time?
I think the better way
I
to
think
think,
we're gonna do this as quickly as possible.
Yeah, in the coming week or two.
yeah, I think the better way to think,
Can I sum that
Yeah.
up real quick? I think that if we're going for a motion to to conditionally approve this, would have the condition that it sounds as though there's two lanes going in, but we have to town staff, it sounds like they need a little bit more time to figure out if it's Technology Hill or Akira Way, but there's certainly one going in on Kitty Hawk. Is that a fair assumption?
Okay.
So that would be what the condition is.
you got it exactly right.
If we would leave that to staff to do a little bit more digging, or, if you feel one way about it, we could make a decision on it.
And you're okay with that, John?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
Rick, anything else from the board?
I'd echo what Tony has said, because I think this seems to be a great relationship with really the applicant, town staff, helpful traffic engineers that have put this together so that it is understandable from a lay perspective. I did look through that big volume. There are a lot of numbers, which to me, I had to look for the summaries to see what was really going on, and then go back and look at some of the numbers, and then the data became more meaningful, so there was a lot there.
All right. Anything else? With that, I'm going to open up public comment. If anybody from the public has anything they'd like to add, come on up. Seeing none, before I close public comment, Art or Lynn, if you could read into record, I believe there was one letter.
Oh. I'll let you, it was closer to you, Lynn, so.
It's a long, what?
Yeah.
It's a long,
That rolled right down.
it's a fairly long email, so bear with me.
Well, we can take
please.
turns, Lynn.
So the email is to the planning board. Subject is Technology Hill traffic study. It's from Dave Robbins. And Dave and Patricia Robbins are on 532 Mammoth Road, Londonderry, New Hampshire. Good evening. Unfortunately, my wife and I cannot attend the planning board meeting this evening. However, we would like to offer some comments and thoughts on traffic concerns and the Technology Hill traffic study. As many of you know, over the past several years, multiple homeowners on Mammoth Road between Rockingham Road and Page/Grenier Field have been seeking a solution to the growing speed and traffic issues on our road. Last year, the town council approved 3 stop signs on Mammoth Road. It is our opinion that the stop signs have proven beneficial in reducing traffic volume and slowing drivers down. We are grateful to the town for taking action for us. Because we fought so long and hard for a solution, we are sensitive to any significant changes in traffic patterns and potential increases in traffic volume. It is our understanding that Technology Hill traffic study includes a four-way stop recommendation at the intersection of Grenier Field / Page and Mammoth Road. We would strongly recommend not pursuing the four-way stop for two reasons. First, at one point, this intersection was a four-way stop, and the town removed it due to noise created by large trucks engaging their engine brakes. With all the growth and increase in truck traffic on Grenier Field / Page, the noise problem will certainly be much more significant today. If we make a four-way stop, we will be creating a new, old noise problem that we have already addressed. Second, if a four-way stop is installed at this intersection, many drivers will feel Mammoth Road will once again be a viable shortcut, reversing recent traffic improvements. This too would create a new problem to address. We strongly encourage the planning board to pursue improvements to Rockingham Road / Page Road intersections so the traffic can safely and efficiently enter Rockingham Road, alleviating backup issues on Page. By improving access to Rockingham Road, drivers will not seek shortcuts, thus relieving speeding problems and congestion on Londonderry's secondary roads. Finally, we ask that you do everything possible to preserve the benefit that we have realized on Mammoth Road and help us protect the integrity of our neighborhood. Sincerely, Patricia and Dave Robbins.
Thank you. Before I close public comment, anything from the public?
We do have another,
That's first.
Next one.
Yeah.
Next one.
Seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board. I do just want to note, I know we've gone through this, but we do that with the four-way stop sign, the town should be aware that the implementation of an all-way stop control at Mammoth Road and Grenier Field Road will increase overall intersection level of service and decrease delay on Mammoth Road, appearing to not fulfill the town's intention of discouraging traffic. So I think we're all in agreement about the four-way stop sign that is
Not to pursue
discussed
it.
in there. Not to pursue
to
it.
pursue it.
Correct. All right. Before we move on here, anything else from the board? All right. I am looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I will move that we conditionally approve the traffic plan associated with the Village on Technology Hill Planned Unit Development, tax map 28, lots 31-6, 29-2, and tax map 17, lots 2, 5-3, 5-4, 5-5. Londonderry Holdings LLC is the owner and applicant in accordance with and subject to the Stantec memorandum dated September 27th, 2024, and the applicant's response letter dated October 2nd, 2024. Upon the usual precedent and subsequent general subsequent conditions of approval insofar as the same are applicable to the traffic plan, and I think we have the condition that staff will make a determination where the southbound left turn will be on Harvey Road.
Correct.
I have a motion from Art. Do I have a second? I have a second from Jeff. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the chair votes in the affirmative. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, members of
All
the
right.
board.
Next on the agenda tonight is a public hearing on an application for formal review of a site plan amendment for an addition of a mobile PET scan trailer within the existing medical office building site, 6 Buttrick Road, map 7, lot 37-1, zone C3, DVK Londonderry Medical Office LLC. Meg Asset Management is the owner, and Cardiovascular Specialists of New England are the applicant. Let me just get the right.
I got it on here. Thank you. I got your email.
All right. Before they get into it here, I'm going to check this for completeness. There are no outstanding checklist items. I am looking for a motion to accept this application as complete.
Mr. Chairman, I will move that this application is complete.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative. Your application is accepted as complete. Good
Thank you.
evening.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Duquette from Greenman Peterson. I'm a professional an engineer with the company. Also here with me is Sylvia Yang from Cardiovascular Specialist of New England. We also have two others in the audience too to help us answer questions regarding the medical field that I cannot answer.
Hard to pick out which two they are. The audience. Just so that you know, before you start, we have computers inside of the desk. So when we're looking down, we're not sleeping or ignoring you. We're actually looking at the presentation that you're showing up on the screens.
I wouldn't
that are
blame
inside the
you.
desk.
It's getting late, so either way.
This is early.
That's true.
We want to make sure our verbiage is correct, you know, so it's.
So we're here today regarding 6 Buttrick Way Road, rather. It's in 1999. It was approved for 3-story, but it's kind of like 2 stories and a basement for medical office use. So the top 2 stories were approved for medical office use, and the bottom floor was approved for storage. We're not planning on changing any of that. It will still continue to be that today. What we are proposing is to bring in a mobile PET scan trailer. So that location is shown on the plan. We'll be taking up 6 parking spaces. And because we're taking up 6 parking spaces, we're now
Short
the-
6 parking spaces?
not 6 parking spaces, but we are short 3 parking spaces. So when the building was measured, it actually was smaller than was originally approved, so that has helped us out with the not being at 6. And the other thing is some of the parking ratios have changed with the storage. I think went from 12 to 1,500 square
Is
feet.
this trailer, it's permanent?
No, it can be moved. So if, because Cardiovascular Specialist of New England is a tenant of Meg Companies, who is the landlord, if they were to move, the trailer would move with them.
But it will be permanent as long as they're a tenant there.
Exactly. Right.
It's like portables.
Right. Exactly like that. So what they're proposing is once the expandable walls are open, it's a total of 520 square feet. So it's not a large unit. It consists of 1 scan unit and a waiting room. So really we're looking at 1 person potentially being scanned, 1 staff member, and 1 in the waiting room for that trailer. And that's the maximum in that trailer. So we did the breakdown. We did the breakdown per the ratios. The ratios said that we needed 75 parking spaces with the addition of the trailer and counting the storage space. Then we looked at it and said, well, that storage space is being used by the employees of CSNE downstairs in the basement. There's no employees down there. Those are being considered in the first 2 floors. So with the removal of that, we have 70 parking spaces, a need for 70 parking spaces, and we have 72 on site with the removal of the 6. So it would meet it if we did not count the storage parking spaces. The other way to look at it too is we did a very detailed breakdown of CSNE's needs for the first and second floor, which they have practically all of the building except for a small section of the building, which is broken out in the calculation too. That calculation with all of their maximum staff per shift, and that includes growth, and their maximum in the waiting room, that all added up to 70 parking, the need for 70 spaces as well. So it kind of, it does it is consistent with not having to park that storage area. So we wanted to make sure we gave you two different ways to look at it, because I know the regulation gives you flexibility in the number of required off-site parking spaces required under section 3.09 B, but we wanted to give you the flexibility for the waiver as well. So I did submit a waiver request letter, and I can read through that, but that's basically goes through everything I just said. The other thing to mention is on the staff memo, surprisingly, in 1999, this was approved with only 2 accessible spaces, and realistically, for 77 spaces, 4 spaces would have been required. So with 72 spaces being required, we are required to have 3 accessible spaces. So we do have enough room to add that additional accessible space with a 5-foot clearance aisle without losing any more spaces. So the plan that first plan does show adding that additional parking space. So we're going to have to modify the ramp. The landlord, Meg Company, is aware of this change. They are planning on restriping the site anyways. So it's going to be some change to the parking striping along the front and changes to the ramp to make it ADA compliant. And other than that, we're both here to answer any questions you may have.
Fantastic. I'll start with town staff. Yep. Again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, again, staff had met with the applicant quite a while ago. Can't remember exactly when. We had discussed it. Again, in the site plan regulations, that 3.09I does give the planning board flexibility when they look into the nitty-gritty of it. And as Nicole indicated, they looked at each floor, and it makes sense as far as if it's a storage area, it's a storage for someone else that's in the building. So even some of those other numbers are, in my mind, is, you can kind of question it. Even that mobile unit, my thinking is, if you're gonna go to the mobile unit, you're probably gonna go into the building first, meet in the building, then you're gonna probably be walked out into the mobile unit. So again, when you look at the numbers, you're not going to the mobile unit with the person that drove you there and somebody sitting in the mobile unit, so I'm good with it.
Yeah, just this, we had hoped to do this administratively, but because there was a waiver that, or flexibility that really is a board decision, we processed this as expeditiously as possible. I think that, the applicant has addressed, if I can give the board some guidance and advice, I think that the path of least resistance here is probably to just use the flexibility that is built into the parking.
I was going to say, I feel like we don't necessarily need the waiver, correct?
Correct. And I mean, so they addressed, I think under that, section IA, it sounds to me like is what they're meeting.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Anything from the board?
So I'm not against this, so let's start with that. But you do know that I was a patient there when Derry Medical Center was there for many years, and parking was horrible when they were resident there. There were most often cars were parked on the side of the driveway going up. So I just, with the first floor not being used, I kind of think that kind of mitigates that problem. But as long as the applicant is good with it, I guess I'm good with it too.
Was that when they had the fire
No.
and they moved over?
No, that was in
The
Derry.
fire was a whole nother story.
That was in
Yeah.
Derry. Yeah, that was in Derry, not Londonderry. But parking was historically horrible here. Just
Because they did move offices when that fire happened over into this Londonderry
that was
building.
before that.
Yeah, it was exacerbated once the
Yes.
dairy office had
Yes.
closed. It was exacerbated quite a bit. Anything else from the board, Mr. D? I see your finger up.
So, how many employees did you say there's gonna be?
We broke it down per room. We were that specific, so I'd have to add them up.
Let's come close.
How many do you think you have in there?
We have two sites.
She's
Our
our
total
VP of
number
operations.
employees doesn't represent how many are there at a time, because the positions go to another site in Manchester as well as to Austin.
Sorry,
If you,
sorry,
yeah,
you
if
need
you
to
could
come
just
up.
come up to the mic real
Sorry.
quick, thank you.
This is a live broadcast, so that's
You're
why,
on air.
That's why I fix my hair before every meeting.
I would fix mine.
Please identify yourself. Thank you.
I'm Carol Ann O'Sullivan. I work at the practice as a Vice President of Operations.
Thank you.
So at any one, we have a number of employees, but not all of them are there at one time. We have 2 offices. The physicians also are between several sites. So at any one time, we would have probably a maximum of 25 staff and physicians there. And that is we have staggered shifts, and since we've opened and planning for growth, we've never been more than because I look at parking all of the time there, and I had met with Derry Medical Center at that building when they were there. We've never been anywhere near capacity. So
is
I'm
it-
not.
So it's fair to say, based on how you are going to utilize this site, you have more than enough parking. There's not going to be cars on the street. It's not going to be an issue because you have, it sounds to me, at least a third more parking than you're ever going to use. Even if you have people doubling up and happen to show up at the same time before someone else leaves, you're in good shape.
That is how we've looked at it every which way to ensure that, because we don't want our patients to have to
Understood.
walk.
And just so that it's addressed to, we overdid these calculations when we did the breakdown, and I had them do what is your anticipated growth.
And understand,
so we put
understand I have to
40
ask-
in there.
Sure, I have to ask the question because this was a source that my phone didn't ring, but these guys' phones rang, and several of the offices in this building rang when this building was cited by a different company. When there was the fire, it was even worse. Luckily, the building across the street was vacant, and the owner of that building was nice enough to allow parking to happen on that side and in his parking lot as well. So it's a little bit of a sore thumb, so the questions need to be asked and answered just to double, triple check to make sure that we're doing this. That said, I would like to say, based on my experience, this type of a medical trailer, and that there is a joke there that I'm going to get to, but this type of a medical trailer is used and has been used for more than a decade. I want to say decades, but I date myself. In the parking lots of hospitals, medical facilities, and whatever. This is not a new thing. This has been done lots and lots of times. This is not a new innovation. This is something that's almost a natural course of events, as I understand it, partially because of the cost of the machinery and the leasing, rental, whatever it happens to be, or the cost of building a building around it. In this case, you can't do that. So it's fair. Am I fair to say the things that I just said?
Yes.
Okay. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm all set with this. I don't think we need to do anything other than the regs allow them to do this.
Yep.
As it sits right now, as far as I'm concerned.
I would agree. With that, anything else from the board before we go to the public?
I didn't get to the joke though.
It's okay.
Yeah.
What kind of pets are you scanning? I had to say it. I'm sorry.
Knew it was coming.
I've been thinking about it for 2 weeks since we saw this was coming up, and so you don't have to answer.
We gave him his moment.
I had to do it.
All right. Anything else from the board?
I think it's pretty straightforward, looks good.
Fantastic. I am going, being a public hearing, I will open it up to the public. Anything from the public?
We got one letter.
We have a letter.
We have a letter we can read into the record.
Want me to? I'm happy to.
You got it right there, Lynn, so you go ahead.
So we do have a letter to be read into the record, Mr. Chair. It is from the Solomon Law Firm, 1 Buttrick Road, Londonderry, New Hampshire. Addressed to the town of Londonderry, Planning and Economic Development Department, 268B Mammoth Road, Town Hall, 2nd floor, Londonderry, New Hampshire. Dear Chairman Butler, I am a member and the managing partner of Buttrick Road Realty Trust, situated at 1 Buttrick Road, Londonderry. I am writing regarding the site plan hearing for 6 Buttrick Road, Londonderry, scheduled for October 2nd, 2024. Our property is located directly across the street from the property which is the subject of the hearing. We are in full support of the applicant and their plan and believe the location is a perfect site for the proposed business. Please make this letter an official part of the record of the hearing at issue. Thank you. Respectfully submitted, Buttrick Road Realty Trust.
Thank you, sir. And seeing nothing from the public, I will close public comment, bring it back to the board. I would agree. I don't think I know there's a waiver here, but I don't think there's a waiver we need to act on. So I am
So you're looking for
looking for a motion to conditionally approve the site plan amendment.
If you're looking for a motion, Mr. Chair, I can do that. Make a motion
I don't think we need to.
to
No, you-
grant conditional approval.
Do we?
Yeah, we would
Okay.
still,
Yeah, so,
This is a site plan amendment.
yes,
so
exactly.
This is,
Got it,
still need to go through
got it, thank you.
yeah, so it's same process, just adds to what it's already for the
you.
existing site plan.
Got it.
so I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I gotta read the rest of it, Mr. Chair.
All right, I'll let you do that.
I'll let you take my words.
Hurry up, would you?
Okay. I'll make a motion to grant conditional approval of a site plan amendment for an addition of a mobile PET scan trailer within the existing medical office building site, 6 Buttrick Road, tax map 7, lot 37-1, zone commercial 3, BVK Londonderry Medic Office LLC, care of Meg Asset Incorporated, the owner. Cardiovascular Specialist of New England is the applicant, in accordance with plans prepared by Greenman Pedersen Incorporated, dated September 12th, 2024, with the precedent conditions to be fulfilled within 120 days of approval.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
If
I have
I
a
may,
second.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
just to take the consensus of the board that we will note, we will have the applicant note on the plan flexibility and enforcement under site plan regulation 3.09I1 and 2.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep,
Yes.
absolutely. So I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative, and your site plan amendment has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
We can go see the pets, right, Tony?
Yes, bring all your pets.
All right. Other business. We got anything good, Mike? I think you got a busy week for us next week with other
Got a busy
business.
week for you next week. Actually, the vice chair sent something along to me that I think is just fascinating. And we could talk more about this next week, but I just wanted to thank him for keeping such a good eye on things. And note, I'm not trying to make a point. I just think it's, information, data is power. And I think that what he presented me with was some data indicating the density of people per square mile. And that information is based on 2020 census information, but also updated to the past year, 2023. And Bedford at 728 persons per square mile, Merrimack 897 persons per square mile, Derry at 980 persons per square mile, Salem at 1,283 persons per square mile, and the lowest of them all, as far as those comparisons, roughly similar communities that we compare a lot to, Londonderry, 657 people per square mile. So it feels dense. It's certainly denser than it has ever been, but not as dense as many of our peers.
Our neighboring.
We're less than
That,
Bedford.
that's usually what I think people live in town judge how it used to be. And that's usually the type of thing. We're blessed to have a large land area that's helped us. Also, I think the way the, planning has gone and everything, things are spread out. We hide our population quite well.
I think that's exactly right.
And once you're out campaigning and asking people for signs, you realize there's a lot of houses here.
Well, too, and what we've been saying for quite some time now is that the traffic is a question of perception and tolerance. And sometimes those two are on the negative side, sometimes those two are on the positive side, sometimes it's just right, said Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And so that's all you can say, perception and tolerance. But to have us be one of the lowest in this
Impressive data
93
point.
in this 93 corridor is quite a data point to have in your pocket when someone asks a question. So, that's
My
awesome.
thanks to
It's awesome.
the vice chair.
Another interesting, I think, data point is to look at the town budget, divide by the population, so you got a cost per capita. And I know when I was back selectman days, we had done this, and we're always the lowest per capita, for what we have for town employees, the cost of government. The exclusion was at that time the police department. I think they were like second. Salem's usually top. Derry is also. So it's really what you get for the money. The taxpayers pay the money. If they're getting a good value from it, they're relatively content in keeping the tax rates consistent, so it's steady.
Absolutely.
So as a matter of record, Mr. Chair, we haven't had a meeting since I spouted off the last time, about the.
Was that the last meeting?
At the last meeting, about the Heritage Commission. I want to be clear, it was not quite reported, the sentence was lopped off. What I said completely was that I'm a clear advocate of the Heritage Commission. They fill a needy role in the town. All I'm saying is the boundaries need to be pulled in so that they understand the scope of the work that they're being asked to do as an advisory commission, board, whatever you want to call it. So the newspaper article did a pretty good job of paraphrasing what I said, but they left out the part where I said I'm in support of that committee. So I wanted to make a note of that.
You want to correct the minutes, Tony, so our minutes reflect this?
We'll talk about that next week,
Oh,
sure.
okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So that and the fact that we did provide yet again, like we do at every meeting, multiple sessions of public comment. And with that, I would make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And have a good night.